So if I could call the meeting to order, please, at 6:01 p.m. Welcome to our Board of Ed meeting tonight, January 31st. Please take note of the emergency exit. And if everyone will please join me. I'm going to roll call. Fancy. Mrs. Gillis.
I'm here.
Mr. Jackson.
Here.
Mrs. Snyder.
Here.
Mrs. Gendron.
Here.
Curtis.
Here.
Mr. Droz.
Here.
And Mrs. Perry is here. But this time I'd like to turn it over to Superintendent O'Shea, who will introduce our esteemed guest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it's my privilege this evening to welcome Assembly Member John McDonald. John, we are so happy that you took some time out of your busy schedule to join us this evening to talk about the state budget.
Well, thank you, Peggy, and of course to the board, and thank you, and of course, to our faculty, staff, families that are here. So as is custom, try to give you a little bit of an update of what's going on with the state budget, because it does play a little bit of a role in how things go with education, not only in Cohoes, but every other community. Let me give you a statewide perspective, as Governor indicated when she gave the state address. The finances aren't as strong as they used to be. And I remember last year I made it a point to all the districts I go to, I think I had about 9 or 10, that last year was probably about as good as it's going to get in regards to increase. And we've seen some significant increases. So I'm back to tell you that I was actually right, and I'm sorry about it. However, from Cohoes' perspective, it could be much worse. And it is much worse. Majority of districts I represent. So the challenge of being a high needs district is that you actually end up doing a little better in this process. Statewide, there's a $507 million increase in what's called foundation is really the operating component. There's expense-based aids, and Stacy can worry about all that stuff. And I don't look at capital because capital is a reimbursement grant. So it's about what do you have to do? And, for the city statewide, there's an increase of $507 million, but that falls about $420 million short if we kept going with that fully funded model that we finally reached the last couple of years statewide. What does it mean to Cohoes? So last year, it was just south of $26 million. It was $25.95 million in state aid, which was a significant increase from the year before, a $5 million increase. You are going to see an increase, which not every district is seeing. It's going to be about $27.94 million. So almost a $2 million increase in operating aid. That rounds out to about 6.37%. That's much better than most folks do. So this is when I usually say, it only gets better from here. So I think we have what is below where things are going to be. I can tell you overall, there's a lot of satisfaction. There's 337 school districts that are seeing significant increases, or excuse me, significant decreases today. And we've always had what's called this hold harmless clause, where there'd be at least a 3% increase. A lot of districts are not seeing it. They're seeing significant drops. So we've got a challenge on our hands. And there's other factors. A lot deals with population. And, a lot of school districts, the state is losing just a lot of things. I don't want to get into a political conversation, but the reality is families aren't as big as they used to. And that's not going to change for another 10, 15 years, still. So we all have to kind of emphasize things. It calls out for trying to change the formula. For a little wine and skill or Able Park that I have a bit of. Yeah, it's probably worth changing the formula. But for the cities like Cohoes and Waterloo and Troy that I represent, I really like to take a deeper dive at that because we can't forget our high needs districts have a lot of needs. Not that they don't have needs in the rural parts of the state. Able Park has that ruralness to it, but we're here to talk about Cohoes. So I'm gonna keep it at that. So the whole part of this position is what's driving a lot of the changes. And they also changed the inflation formula. They kind of just said, instead of doing year over year, we're gonna do a 10-year average, but we're gonna take out the two highest years. So that kind of scrunches it down. So the good news is, even with the shortfalls and the shortages, there's $100 million left that the governor said, we're gonna put this in there and you guys have to figure out how to use it. Reminds me how I used to negotiate with the unions here in Cohoes. Here's how much we're gonna spend, you guys fight over it. So we're gonna fight over it. But then the other thing to keep in mind, and this gets into the schedule, timeline. Usually by March 1st, probably be February 29th this year, since we got that extra day. The leaders of both houses and DOB will sit down with the governor and they'll come up with what our revenue is going to be. We have a rough idea what we're going to use for the revenue side of the budget, but we wait until March 1st to have the most current information, to really get an idea of what revenue we're going to do. Every year since I've been there, that number has only gone up. That gives us the opportunity to address the areas where we're dissatisfied with. But I can tell you right now, statewide budget-wise, education's number one, clean water infrastructure is number two, and housing is number three. It runs that way. So those will be the three that will be supporting whatever funds are left over. So that's on the budget perspective. We won't be done, we definitely will not have a budget approved April 1st, because that's going to be the day after Easter, and we're just not going to be there through the Easter weekend. So highly unlikely we'll be done Thursday before or Friday before, only Thursday, Good Friday. Highly, that's a chance, but I'd be shocked. Probably the first, second week of April, the budget will be done. It depends on how the housing fight goes, to be honest with you. But that's helpful for you guys. It gives you time to make your plans and get things ready to go before the public. The other priorities in the budget, they're minor. One is still on the list from the top 10 from everything. A lot of stuff has been checked off and dealt with in the last several years, but the whole CTE salary cap, which is important as more students are choosing CTE and working it, whether it's through programs here or through hostess, cap on the instructor's salaries. We want to raise the cap. That means also we need to have more money sent to help cause that reimbursement to happen. So we're still pushing that. The other hot topic, which probably isn't the biggest topic here in the city of Cohoes, is the long planned transition to electric school buses. You don't have a bus fleet, so you don't need to worry about it. Count your blessings, because every other school district is apoplectic about it, and for good reason. Listen, we all agree that we need to move in the right direction, but we need to do it sensibly. And when you're talking about, allowing districts to amortize school buses over 12 years when they have a 10-year useful life, you can see where we got a problem with that. And, maybe electric school buses will work well in a city like this, but I wouldn't want to be driving through the rural parts of Rensselaer County at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning with a school bus. So, this will change, probably somewhere in the 2030s, maybe towards 2037 versus 2031. This will get better and technology will improve, but what we're trying to do is find a spot where we don't, where people walk away and say, okay, we're being practical about this, because if you're in that arena of dealing with school buses, and I'm sharing only because it gets melded into the whole education conversation, it gets to be problematic because, Stacy knows this better than everybody else. Wow. It's not like you just wake up, on October 1st, they're going to start working on the budget next year. You plan out over 2-3 years at a minimum. And when you're looking at your capital, that you have to plan long range. And, are you budgeting for a $175,000 bus or a $400,000 bus, which where they're at right now. And by the way, there's not enough energy in many of these communities to support building these substations for these facilities. So count your blessings. It's not probably the biggest issue, although we'll have some impact on whatever transportation costs you have. So we got our work cut out for us. But that being said, I know you've got a larger agenda, but I'd be happy to entertain any questions related to education. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I have to close related to Cohoes. I think that's about it. Workforce. I have a question about workforce, actually. We develop, it's not dealing, doesn't focus on teachers, although we know there's a teacher shortage. And we're trying to keep increasing, we've been increasing the last several years, the ceiling for retirees, because I know they're helping in many aspects. I think we're going to continue to roll that for a couple more years, but there's a program that we put in place last year in the budget. It got extended for the state, and we're going to extend it for local governments next week, where it's called New York Helps, where it allows a lot of the civil service rules to be suspended for some of these positions. I don't know if it's applicable here or not. I know that at the state level, it's very applicable in some of the city town positions is, but it just helps you suspend some of your civil service requirements. Just because sometimes you just gotta hire, you gotta hire people. I've been thinking about applying for the part-time custodian job. You see every morning when I drive by, every morning.
Excellent.
So they got the free time, but somebody take the
Wait,
job.
any substitutes?
Take the position.
Science.
No, I don't. Keep it very clear. I never want to teach. I don't want to hear that.
So my question, was going to ask about the waiver for substitute or for retirees, because we do have some retirees who are working with us right now, and it's something that we need in order to continue. And then my other question was, if there has ever been any conversation, the governor was here to present the city with the downtown revitalization grant, and her big platform was building housing and affordable housing for residents. And while other districts may be seeing a decrease in enrollment, we're not necessarily there. And not only are we seeing our numbers fairly steady, our needs are increasing. And so for us to be awarded such an amazing grant, with the thoughts of increasing our housing, our schools are already at capacity. And for us to be able to afford to put any kind of additions on or purchase any other buildings, very thankful for an increase in the aid, but that it doesn't get us to where we need to be in order to handle the capacity of what is being asked of us.
So on the DRI itself, which is the city's application, that is currently being reviewed by the Department of State. And I actually haven't seen the final version, so I don't know all that's in there. But I can, in that particular situation, I can tell you that it does not look like affordable housing or workforce housing will be a part of it. It's going to be, if there's going to be any, it'll be market rate. And the units are usually not scheduled to be, it's not going to be like a 100-unit complex by any stretch of the imagination. And right now, the housing itself has been put on a standstill. Surprisingly, in Lexington Hills, they actually carried it out last year. I don't know what impact that's going to have on the district. Usually, those areas pretty high end. It's usually more towards couples who are retired, to be honest with you. So hopefully that will have an impact on the district. But in talking to the mayor and talking to, they're more focused on more business type opportunities in the downtown area. So it would hopefully be less of a burden in the school district. But we don't love kids. We love kids. But we also, you're right, you raise a good point.
I mean, it was her main message was to build affordable housing in upstate New York. And we are seeing a little bit of a migration up to upstate, so we're seeing some of those transfers. It's just a matter of, yes, we would love to see our city grow and build. It's just a matter of how do we then, as a mandate to educate, for public school districts, afford to be able to do that without support to know we have to grow our buildings in order to keep that capacity. So
the emphasis this year, at least from what the governor said in their address, was mostly focusing, yes, on housing, but more likely more downstate. Because quite frankly, when you get into that conversation about where are people going, why are they leaving? Yeah, number one, they go to Florida. Number four, they go to Texas. Or they go to New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. It's not because of climate. It's because of affordability in the city. I was sharing with Jackie, wishing my in. My daughter was living in Manhattan and just moved over across the river to Jersey City. 20% less rent, 20% more space.
Yeah.
So the demand is so high in the city that the rents have shut up. So they need to build more market rate in many aspects. But if you watch the news around here, they all talk about affordable housing. It needs to be a good mix. I think Cohoes has done a pretty good job of trying to have a fair mix over the years. I will tell you, when I was mayor, I learned early on, we had more than our fair share of affordable housing, and that's why we worked on it. To kind of help boost that rooftop income.
So Assembly Member, just wanted to thank you for all your advocacy on behalf of the district. We're kind of a hometown hero around here. And we appreciate in advance anything you can do to keep us at our levels when the whole harmless conversation comes about. And, you know, our L numbers are up, our enrollment is up from 10 years ago, our combined wealth ratio is down. So we know that it's, you know, front and center for you. Grateful.
Absolutely.
The defense you provide us.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Anything else?
Stacy, no questions this year?
Well, actually.
Not so
Well,
quick out.
There's prior year losses and they're not touching it.
Right.
Sorry, I just say that on the way out the door. That's an inside baseball conversation.
We did have a letter, yeah. My concern is, I shared Nadia's concern, actually. I don't expect the hold harmless to stick, if you will, through the final process. And we're just being funded to the levels that we should have been funded for decades.
Yeah.
And so I'm concerned about how the state is going to fill that $4.3 billion revenue gap.
So if we kept going on the route we were going, you would have seen another $380,000 in the number we talked about. Let's hope to get there, right? We had the way we do things in the legislature, I can't speak to the Senate, I can speak to the Assembly. We conference each area, so each chair gets up every day, gives a briefing. I did GovOps the other night for an hour and gave a briefing on what the governor proposed. So today was education, coincidentally enough. It was getaway day, so not a lot of members were there, which was really nice. But it was very universal. At one point after the third speaker just said, listen, okay, we know we got to fix the hold harmless, and I need to also make sure we protect everybody and just raise up those, at a minimum, raise the people who've been hurt the most and don't hurt the people who have been hurting for a long period of time.
Okay.
So hopefully that answers your question. But, you know, as you know, we stay in touch, keep on top of it and keep working at it. We've only got 2 months to go. 2 months that are usually like half a year. You ready?
Thank you so much. Thanks. So as we are at the mid-year point of the school year, we wanted to share some demographic and assessment data with you. When we got up to slide 20, we decided to break this into 2 parts, just so you know, because of some other topics. So today we're going to do demographics, 3 through 8 assessments, iReady, and high school graduation rate. At our next meeting, we're going to do high school Regents results, and we'll also do behavior data at that time, just so you know. So if you look at our district enrollment, as just mentioned, we have increased. There's been a significant increase from the 22-23 school year to this school year, from 1,837 to 1,899. It brings us back to almost where we were, but back in 13, 14, and well, that was a little higher, and then back in 16, 17. So we have this broken down by building as well. And then when we do our budget presentations, this is current, we'll show you the movement into next school year as part of the budget presentations. So on the next slide, Abram Lansing. So Abram Lansing's enrollment has decreased over the years. If you look at it compared to last year, it went from 326 to 320. One thing we have, Harmony Hill, we'll be talking about that in a minute, does have the students with ENL. So the students who have ENL needs are not in the Lansing numbers or the Van Skyke numbers. We have been doing that since prior to 2018, but as you know, our ENL enrollment has really increased. So you'll see that as part of Harmony Hill. So on the next slide, Harmony Hill. So not back up to the large numbers in 2018, but last year 379 and this year 378. So their enrollment increased from some years previous and is holding steady to last year. And again, these numbers aren't reflecting the needs of the buildings in terms of students with disabilities, ELL, they're purely numbers. And as we do some of the budget reports in that area, we'll break those down as well. Van Skyke, you'll see a significant dip in 2020. At that point in time, that is when we moved one of our self-contained classrooms from Van Skyke to Abram Lansing. So they're holding steady from last year, 136 to about 137. And this is all as of Bed's Day in October, just so you know. And then on the next slide, I'm not sure who's flipping here today. Are you flipping? Okay. Pretty good clicker. So Cohoes Middle School, definitely a significant increase from last year to this year. And that's been seen, and we've talked about this in the large number of students in sixth grade. We did add an additional sixth grade teacher, also increased number of needs. And so this is the cohort that will then follow through to seventh grade and eighth grade. And as we do budgets, we'll be planning accordingly. The good news for those sixth grade teachers out there, I see some of you, is that the numbers in fifth grade are smaller this year. So your numbers in fifth grade should be smaller. So at the high school, you'll see a significant increase as well for this year. And the numbers at the high school have been combined into ninth and 10th. So increase in ninth grade about 11 students, but you'll see that 10th grade cohort is a big cohort as well. So overall, if I count on my fingers fast, about 43 students, and we've seen that impact in ninth grade programming too. And then when the principals speak to their budgets, you'll see some requests because of those numbers as well. So in terms of our district free and reduced lunch percentages, in 1920, we were at 60%. Those numbers have district-wide remained steady since 2021, 69%, now 68%. When you look at the individual buildings in terms of free and reduced lunch, the percentages by building, they've wavered some throughout the years. Lansing last year was 80%. They were a high of 84% in 21, 22, 76% this year. Harmony Hill, 62%. A few years back, they were at a high of 66%. Van Skyke, 75% this year. And we can provide actual numbers too, if you wish. Middle school has remained steady, around 68%. And then the high school, just a slight increase. But so overall, you can see though that all of our buildings are above 50%, and some quite a bit above 50%. So all above 60% actually with free and reduced lunch. And then our special education enrollment, and we're digging deeper into this data in terms of special education. During our special education presentation, we'd like to be able to show what percentage of these increases at times are from, students transitioning in. I know we always talk about, so where are the students being, identified? Is it students within the district? Is it students moving in? I know anecdotally we have a feel, but I really want to share the data. And then we can break this down by needs as well. So our number of special education students currently is 371. That is a slight increase over last year in terms of numbers, but because our enrollment has increased, the percentage has decreased. So that's a kind of a picture of where we're at right now, and can provide some additional, we're going to, as going through this, we should make sure we have a slide to share with you for our ELL students, because as mentioned in the past, our numbers have increased, maybe not significantly from last year or the year before, but they have, but our needs in ELL have increased significantly in terms of more students coming to us, beginning at the beginning levels, or the emergent, right, Jacqueline, emergent levels. So, and we'll talk more about that when Jacqueline talks about the ELL budget. Any questions before we go on to 3 through 8 assessment?
Do you have a decent feeling about what the overall driver was for the 63-ish additional students we had this year?
For special education?
No, just overall.
Oh, overall?
Is it mostly people moving in? Is it big cohort coming in, small cohort going out?
So our sixth grade cohort, or last year's fifth grade cohort, we knew it was larger. However, we
No,
had.
I meant like district-wide.
Yeah, we had a lot of students moving in at the beginning of the year in both sixth grade and ninth grade. So I feel that's the case of
16 came from charter schools.
16. Well, the good news is 16 came back
Double-edged sword,
from
but yeah,
charter
good overall.
schools. I think is Laura here? Yeah. Oh, right there. There. Oh, look at you. How did I miss you, Dan? So have had an influx of newer ninth graders too, would you say? Yeah.
Several services.
Right, and same thing in sixth, which kind of goes to what Mrs. Giller was talking about earlier with Mr. McDonald. Increased needs.
Well, another point I wanted to make is that even though this is representative of K-12, we still have a pretty strong EPK program that are filling spaces in each of our buildings too. And,
Yes.
it's not represented on these slides, but as far as resources inside of our buildings, I know a lot of those things are paid for through the grant, but it still puts a drain on the buildings.
So our 3-year-old UPKs are at capacity, and we could, we had students on waiting lists. Our 4-year-olds, we thought we might be able to have another class, but there weren't enough students, so that's an anomaly, but good point. UPK is also a big piece of this. So at this time, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Martinelli to talk about New York State assessments and iReady.
So we've discussed this year at New York State assessments. We got the data super late, particularly the comparison data for other districts, although we did fare well against districts, Waterloo, Lansing, Bergen. This represents all kids, level 4, 3, 2, 1. 4 is advanced proficiency, 3 is proficiency. We always add those two together, and this gives us our proficiency for the year. That's what ends up in the newspaper. And then level 2 and level 1. And we monitor and watch these numbers. I'll show you on another slide, because those are the kids that we know we absolutely have to deliver some AIS services to. They may be deficient in reading or math or both, which is often the case. Reference. Just to look at another way, I like to look at these ELA results. This is district-wide, so this is grades 3 through 8, sort of all put together. You can see the level 1 is red, level 2, 3, 4. You'll see 2019, hey Dan, what happened to the other tests? You'll see most districts out there right now are sort of using these 3 years. The ones in between, you really can't even compare.
And we could really have an argument over whether I can compare the 2023 exam to the 2019 exam. They're kind of apples and oranges, both in the questions that they ask, some of the standards that they attach, and writing pieces and the scoring rubrics and all the things you typically go through. But surprisingly, the numbers, as you go from year to year, I mean, there's a little bit of fluctuation. We, of course, always want to move our kids from 1s to 2s and 2s to 3s. You'll find that somewhere around here, I'm just going to pick a random space, but around here is where we're going to start by mandate, picking the kids that we have to deliver academic intervention services for. So those numbers are high, those goes into level 2. We pick a certain scale score. I'm going to do the same thing for math. And traditionally, our math scores were always higher than our ELA scores. That's flip-flopped a little bit in the last few years, but I do feel like we're sort of bouncing that in the math arena. It was really hard for kids to learn math during the pandemic, even for my own kids. That's just my own personal feeling, but it was tough to learn anything. So I'm gonna slow down because these things can get confusing, but you asked to compare iReady scores to New York State test scores. And this is anecdotal data. I love anecdotal data, but you can poke holes in it, I realize. But I personally think this is kind of telling. So on New York State testing program, I've labeled, on the top, and there's iReady. And iReady, you break the scores into 5 components. New York State does it for 4. But if we start chunking the low numbers, the 16 and the 13 is 29, it's not that far off. If we look at our middle of the road, again, it's very, very close, 29, 33%. And then when we chunk the proficient and advanced proficient, and again, in the iReady world, these kids are 3 or more years below in their reading level. They're 2 years. These kids are 1 year away, hopefully, level, and this is early on grade level. This is right, of course, we want kids right here. There's a little bit of a leeway there. But for these 2 years, for the 2 years that we've been doing iReady district-wide in all 3 elementaries and the middle school, and having adopted a new curriculum at the elementary schools, iReady, this is our first full year of implementation. This is reading, of course. I see that these are lines. I see the predictive value, at least anecdotally, of digging into this data to learn what kids know and don't know. And that's what we don't get from New York State data when they give us the data in December. I feel like the iReady data gives us a nice window into what kids know. It's not perfect. It doesn't replace good teaching in any way, shape, or form, but it's nice to have accurate, frequent measures on kids. So I'm going to go to math, and we'll see if the story's the same. Well, not here. It's similar, but again, we're seeing kids grow. We're seeing the 1s move to 2s and the 2s move to 3s, and we're certainly hopeful, as we provide supports for kids. And really, we keep talking about budgets. It was quite a few years ago, 10 years ago, when we had a great budget loss. And unfortunately, we had to let go lots of AIS teachers and lots of reading teachers. I feel like we're seeing the effects of much of that even now. And thankfully, through some ARP funding, we were able to get some of that back. And we're all working really hard and diligently to pick out those things that are most important, because we do have to give kids the extra. We have to make sure kids can leave high school strong readers, strong communicators, and writers, and make their way to college with a career choice. Any data questions?
So, Mr. Martinelli, are we using both assessments as what we're determining who gets AIS services?
That's a great question. So absolutely. So when we determine at the elementary level and the middle level, and we look at it every single year, and the school district, while we have to meet the directive of if they don't get the scale score that's in the middle of the twos, they're supposed to get AIS services. I mean, that's an instant hash mark. But what we really do is we also bring in our iReady scores in reading and math. Good teacher opinions. Often at instructional support team meetings, teachers might say, the child might score a little bit higher, but they still might need something, and the teachers know that, and we try to work that in with the resources that we have. But we look at, for AIS, New York State testing, we look at iReady, and then the other good measures that the teachers have. They might do some different measures for some different kids, but where possible, particularly at an IST, we will wrap those in as part of the decision-making process. And we also try to build criteria to take them out of AIS, because that's just important. We don't want kids necessarily in AIS in a year, although some of them are there all year. We want to be able to get kids some interventions and then.
So that was going to be my second question. Is there an interval in which we look at these things, or is it just an ongoing process?
It's ongoing, and it depends on the level and the kids, but we often pick certain percentiles, and we also look at, particularly at the middle school, we might look at their grades, their quarterly grades as well. We'll wrap those. Because again, the opinion of the teachers matter when we move a kid in and out of an intervention. If I messed any of that up, we'll let you know.
Will let me know. Okay.
And then the final slide are graduation rates. So the left side is Cohoes High School. The right side is the district. The district includes our students in out-of-district placements. And so if you look, the blue is our 4-year graduation rate. These are all the rates that are used for our accountability purposes. So the 4-year for accountability purposes includes our graduation rate, both including June and August grads. So those are the percentages. And so I know despite a number of needs, we were able to, thanks to the high school staff and then actually at K-12, all the work throughout, move the graduation rate back up to 82% last year. So thank you all. Laura, I can see where you are now, so I can look at yours. Thank you. I wanted to explain a little bit about the 5-year and 6-year graduation rate, because those are also part of our accountability as measured by the state. And it's a little misleading because it didn't dip in the year. So for example, 2022 contains a number of different years. So to take you through, for example, in 2020, the graduation rate of that cohort 4 years was 86. So then following it to the next year, 2021, 5-year, the rate is 87%, which means given the additional year, whether it's attending a few classes or full-time or passing some regents, the 5-year graduation rate went up 1%. If you look then to 2022, the 6-year graduation rate remained remained at 87%. But that's how we look at it across the cohort. So it's that cohort following along 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. So as mentioned, at our next meeting, we'll be looking at last year's Regents results and how that translates. We'll be looking at behavior data, suspensions, some referral data as discussed earlier in the year. Are there other data pieces, since we're all together here, that you would like to see for the next? I do, in addition to the answers to some of the questions that are back here. Okay, Thank you. So you'll see tonight that there is a first read of the workplace violence prevention policy on the agenda with proposed adoption at the next meeting. And thank you, Mrs. Carey and Mrs. Killer are on the policy committee. It's, I don't know if it's one of our most fun committees, but definitely, thank you so much for
Continuously recruiting.
for your time. And the more people we get, the more policies we can get through. So on September 6th, Governor Hochul signed legislation amending the workplace violence prevention law to include public school districts and BOCES with compliance to begin on January 4th. What I wanted to do, and it's outlined in the policy, is the components is go through some of the timelines with you and talk a little bit about the steps that are involved in the timeline. So the first step is the policy statement, which it's a first read tonight. Once it's approved, it will be posted. We can post components of the policy. As you go through, you'll see some other timelines. The Department of Labor, because this is new and State Ed just recently did presentation in an FAQ, there is a bit of leeway with some of the internal timelines, but not with the May 3rd employee training. But we'll be on track to meet the other timelines. So the first step is evaluation of the workplace. And this is, will be with district level representatives. Tim Murphy, who is our risk person from Capital Region BOCES, but also representatives of each of the three the unions, CTA, CSCA, and CPA. So during that time, we would review our 2023 workplace incident reports in terms of any that resulted in injury based on behaviors, so not your trips, slips, and falls, but anything that would fall under workplace violence. Also evaluating the physical environment. So the group would go to some different areas throughout the district as identified to look at those. And then also there is a risk factors form that we would be doing together. And so that assessment evaluation really helps us plan our actual program to look at the areas that, that we might need to remediate or put mitigating items into place. So then on March 19th, that's when we take all this information, put that together, get input again from the employee representatives, and then complete the program. And I can update you as we go along at board meetings and provide documentation as we build it. And then after that, once this is all in place, the training must be completed. Really, the training is so that, and maybe this can count as your training right up there now if you sign in now. But the training is really just reviewing the workplace violence prevention policy, knowing where to find our plan, knowing where to find our contact person, Mr. Martinelli, and going from there. So it is going to be on Vector. It should only take about 10 minutes. There will be time provided. And then going forward on the next slide, each year annually, we'll review incident reports with employee representatives, evaluate the effectiveness of the steps we have taken, update our program if necessary, and then include this training on an annual basis right at the beginning of the year when we do our mental health, save, violence prevention training. So any questions?
So the risk evaluation, the risk assessment, basically assessment, whatever we're doing in that way, it said basically assessing the environmental impact, right? But I think it's important for us to kind of look at the positions that folks are in, you know, for their risk level as far as not just what's happening outside, you know, of the classroom, but inside too, and or whether it's a receptionist at the front door, like looking at position types, along with like some of the environmental impact that might be because of their location and or what their job responsibilities are.
We have a draft form from Capital Region BOCES that breaks it down into the, you know, the different areas, behavior classrooms, different locations. And as a group, we'll be reviewing those forms as well.
Good.
Thank you. Any other questions? The next thing I'd like to talk about are the bomb threats at Cohoes Middle School. So as you know, there have been 5 separate incidents over the past 2 weeks that is very concerning. Then I'm sorry that I had to send you that information again today. It's concerning in terms of the behavior, but it's also concerning in terms of each time that a threat is made, it means that the police are coming to the middle school and they are community resources that might be needed elsewhere. So today, Kyle and Dean of Students, Principal Kyle McFarland and Dean of Students Joe Havens met with the 6th and 7th graders. I know there were some questions about assemblies. It was felt that being able to go classroom by classroom and have the conversations directly in the smaller rooms, students would be more effective. I do have the outline of what they discussed, but they discussed the seriousness of making threats, the disciplinary consequences that would occur, that criminal actions could be brought against the students. They also discussed that when police are called at the building, they might not be able to respond to other incidents. Just a few other things, and I know there'll be questions, but as you know, 2 of the threats were found in the bathroom. So there are cameras outside of the bathrooms. A sweep of the bathrooms has now been initiated by the campus safety monitors so that, you know, every period as they are doing their routes around the building, they walk into the bathrooms, look if there is anything there, document the time so that if something is found, they know, you know, it narrows down the time frame and that it was, that it's happened. I know working with Mr. McFarland today for temporarily, and then we can assess, he has reached out to some former part-time engaged to see if they would also, you know, come back as substitutes temporarily and also, you know, sit outside of the bathrooms for a bit and monitor. Another thing is just also reminders to make sure that, you know, any unoccupied rooms, the doors are locked. So Mr. Martinelli and I today spoke with Chief Weldon and thanked him for the assistance of the police and also talked through some of these measures that the middle school has taken into place. And he thought that the narrowing of the time frame, you know, being able to pinpoint would be very beneficial. In discussions with the chief, we did find out that depending on the circumstances, bomb threats, you know, can rise to the level of a terroristic threat, which could be a felony or it could be to the county. There's different factors that are taking place into that, but there definitely can be at least some type of action. And then I know Mrs. Marceau and Mr. McFarland have been working to explore some proactive measures for the future. And I think Mrs. Marceau, can you explain?
Yeah, Assistant Chief Keith had actually given me a call last week, unrelated, and he had had a great meeting with all the county crime victims. And a representative from there on a lot of the different programs and services that they can offer to school districts and to communities, to students, individually as well. So I had happened to reach out and have a meeting, I believe Monday mornings with Jolyn from Fulton County Crime Victims. So when all this started to, uptick, I reached out again, asked her what kinds of things you have in regard to safety threats to others, threats to buildings. So she does have some programming available. Tomorrow, but will on Friday be sending me over some information on programs, presentations, and things that they can do from the county so that we can review them. So that she can great to offer some of those presentations with them.
And then Mr. McFarland has been communicating out after each of the incidents. I communicated out today as of the number and the severity. So any questions?
I do. I think as a middle school parent who often has middle schoolers in my car and at home, unfortunately, this has become white noise to the students. And that's super scary as a parent and as a board member because they're not saying giggling about it, but it's like, oh, another bomb threat. So when an active situation could come into play, I am terrified that these kids are not going to be prepared for that. So that is something I'd like to address. And then, is there a way, there's no way these students aren't talking. So, is there a way to, or legally monitoring social media? Are there further steps we can take as a district to try to capture some of it? And I don't know if it's legal, I don't have any idea, but I'm just trying to think proactively because someone knows who's doing this.
I was gonna say, if we provided any sort of anonymous way where they can say, yeah, this is the person doing it, you should probably look over there. Because most kids aren't going to magically put their face on that. But if they have a way to quietly say, look, this is stupid. Just from talking to my own kids. And the other thing, I agree from the same feedback I'm getting from my two middle schoolers is it's still coming across as white noise. The messages they're receiving are still coming across as white noise. Like I've gotten them to open their eyes at home by laying out like very specifically what can happen to kids who do things along these lines. So I don't know, like the district communication I've gotten, I'm not gonna lie, it's been so general. I know we're somewhat restricted on what we can and can't say, but if we provide the general, this is bad, this is serious, if you provide, hey, you can be expelled, you can get a suspension that's this long, I can be on the hook for, $5,000 to $10,000 in fines for stuff that you do. Start to sort of get a reaction for them to understand how serious this actually is.
So we can work in our communications to be more targeted. I do know that in the communications with students in 8th grade will be tomorrow. Mr. McFarland and Mrs. Havens said these are serious crimes. You can be charged with a felony. You can be taken to court and be suspended from school for up to 1 year. So those were said face-to-face with the students today. I'd be happy to share the points with you in an email. The point of the white noise, and if something does happen, that is disconcerting, and we can look to that. I am not sure what the victims' crime prevention, Rachel, entails. Is the call tomorrow?
She's out of the, it's from the week, right?
It'll be Friday.
She was extremely confident. These would should have information, but I know they offer presentations and sessions for.
So if we can talk, and you, Kyle, Dan and I and Joe, and then talk about some of these things and getting them into the presentations as well. And then we're continuing to look at other types of proactive presentations, information that can be given to students outside of the specific, threat piece.
So I think part of the difficulty is that we are encouraging transparency and we want to know when these things are happening so that we can address our kids at home and address our community. I just get frustrated that it takes us 2 weeks to do it. And this should have been taken seriously, not that, we didn't treat it seriously in the investigation, but the fact that we waited 2 weeks to communicate to kids, to children, not to adults, but to children, to say, this will not be tolerated, we will not accept this, and this is why. And the consequences and the conversations that happened today, perfect, wonderful. I am so glad that they got it, but they got it 2 weeks after the first incident. And so as you guys are saying,
Right, exactly.
it's just becoming a joke. And then at what point do we stop reacting to things? And I appreciate like getting the resources and having the conversations, but I feel like we were here last year too, when we were talking about, the cybersecurity and safety. It's always like a reactionary type of thing. And then what do we do to make sure that this is going to be prevented moving forward? And part of that discussion was, great, we gave this training to the middle school, but I heard from our 4th and 5th grade teachers that this is happening down there too. And, we need to like start transitioning some of our thought process. Now, I know that it's not our job to do everything, and there is, a parent connection that needs to happen, and there's responsibility, for parents to communicate these things with their kids. But unfortunately, we know what engagement looks like right now, and yet we're the ones that are having to deal with the actions and the consequences. The disruption that has probably happened in this building over the last 2 weeks has taken away how much time, where kids could be getting the education that they need, that they'd be getting the academics that they need, because they have all of these things happening in the background. And it's not to say we haven't, done a good job of setting expectations. I think the middle school has done a very good job of that. It's just these pieces that, I feel like, see something, say something, do something. This reactionary piece of it taking this long to even get a message out from the superintendent to say, this is serious, and I'm taking this seriously. I do appreciate the fact that you are sitting here and you are giving us and laying it out and giving us all of the information, because I can tell you that there are not many times where we've had this open transparency of, we've got a problem and we need to address it. It's just, what can we do as a board to help address it? And if that means like, the part-time aides and getting people in there, whatever, I just feel like come and ask, and we'll try and do what we can do to help. And if that means, having a presenter come in, but that needs to be an annual thing where these kids are getting this. Now we know that this is a problem, and we need to make sure that it's not just these kids in this building at this time who are being spoken to about it.
So many good points, well taken. If I could address it in terms of social media, and you're right, last year it was social media. We did the presentation here. It was reactionary. This year, we did it at the elementary as well, and then we'll continue it through. It's also in the 6th grade, curriculum in terms of the new class. I do think we need to look at this K-12, and as we're working to build the tiered systems of supports, and we're going to be hearing some more of that at the budget, put it into, action plans, timeframes, and memorialize it. So it is an ongoing thing. And then also looking, at the at the bigger pieces, I know that there's pieces in second step right now about, and I had asked Kyle, about harassing, bullying. I know in some of our other social emotional programming, but laying it all out there, having it become routine, not routine message, but this is what we do each year, and here's our booster, and here's our refresher. And so I agree that will become part of the planning process.
Can we be more specific about the potential consequences of, in the code of conduct? I know may lead to superintendent hearing, but, penalties may be up to whatever, just right there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you. Thank you. So the next topic of conversation is, this is a synergy update on progress. I know I had briefly mentioned it at the last board meeting. And I know I had mentioned this at the last board meeting too. I do want to mention it again, that before I begin, I do understand that this has been an extremely difficult transition for teachers, for staff members, and for students as well. I understand a tremendous amount of time and effort has been put into learning this new program, and it has been very, very frustrating. And I'm going to, because I'm going to kind of start a little bit back from our December meeting and then move forward, discussing some of the concerns, some of the things that have been put into place, and then also letting you know that I think a good time to, and we can do this on an ongoing basis, but also at our March meeting when we have secondary presentations, I think that would also be another natural point to really continue to be talking about this, but giving updates along the way. So as you're aware, in a meeting with President Carey and me, CTA and CSEA representatives shared a number of concerns about synergy and in terms of the rollout, and also system and training concerns with the system itself. So I'm just going to do a high level, just some of the major concerns, but assignments, I know assignments were a big issue with the teachers not being able to see certain assignments submitted. Functionality in terms of some more clicks having to be, more time having to be spent to get to certain things that it took less time with some previous systems. Some communication streams, so staff can email out their large groups of classroom students building, but with some of our clubs and other things like that, it's not, they can't communicate specifically through Synergy unless they have Jensen Giacomo create the group. So before they were able to create the group. And then just a few other things, and again, I know there were more, but assessments not rolling over through Synergy, and some more training needed. So then a request was also made during that meeting for us to have focus groups with the students. Mr. Martinelli and Jensen Giacomo and Laura met with students at the high school, and then middle school students were met with as well. And some of the student concerns did mirror the teachers' concerns about teachers not being able to see certain assignments, and then students having to either send them in a different manner, being not sure if, the teacher got them, sometimes taking pictures on phones, et cetera. The communication streams, having to log in and log again, and I think that's an issue across both. And then one thing that came up with students is on the report card. So we weight averages if students are taking honors classes. There is, the weighted average shows up at the end of the report card, and it is accurate, all the information is accurate, but they can't see their weighted average grade by grade by grade. A comment section was added to the student report card to reflect that, you know, there was a weighted average down below. So from there, and I shared some of this information last week, Dan and Jen and Katrina Hunt, they have regular meetings with our liaison from NARIC. Part of this is we don't work with Synergy directly. We go through Capital Region BOCES, NARIC works with Synergy. It comes back to us. So Dan reached out to Synergy directly because of the major concerns, and had 3 meetings with people about Eastern sales manager, vice president of SMS and some programmers. And last time that we met, I mentioned the fix for the submissions that was going to go into the test system. Part of the reason I wanted to wait, that was going into the test system on January 19th. So that did happen. It does work in the test system. It went live on January 29th. I understand this is just a piece of everything, but the missing assignment piece impacts teachers, impacts students, impacts parents, not knowing did your child do their assignment, impacts grades. So it went live on January 29th. Why the 29th? Because we wanted to get through the second quarter. Jensen, Giacomo, and Dan have been working through the live version, and it appears to work. However, we're looking for, I know Jen's been reaching out to some teachers to make sure that piece works. We were talking about transparency, right, being important. So transparency and before I do this, I also want to mention, you know, Katrina Hunt, our district data coordinator, CEO, has spent hours and hours. Jensen Giacomo has spent hours and hours. Dan has spent hours and hours on this. So, you know, I do feel like I need to mention that as well. The submissions, and Jen shared information with the teachers on how to enable the submissions, distribute the student view. Although I know sometimes, and Jen has done a tremendous job at videos and training tools. I know that face-to-face technology is, you know, sometimes better, depending. So she has offered some training sessions, but we understand those are, you know, after school. So we are also working together so that Jen will be able to be in the buildings and, you know, working with the teachers when they need to see her. Transparency, because it is January, as because of the difficulty and some of the frustrations, more teachers are using Google Classroom. And, you know, the grades go from Google Classroom to Synergy. The high school copy paper, high school had to put an additional order for copy paper because that has increased tremendously because not all of the assessments have, because the assessments could not roll over, teachers have to redo. And because of some of the difficulties, the electronic submissions and the electronic, where in the past students might be able to just submit something electronically, and many times they've converted to pen and paper tests in certain areas. The reason why I want to, you know, continue these discussions and continue having some more updates is because Dan has taken a list of items. We want to make sure we have the additional items directly to Synergy to continue to work on the, functionality, to continue to say, this is, what we really need. I mean, Synergy did, one of the components in the beginning was Synergy is customizable. So these are the things that we need. We understand that teachers need to be able to see those things. And so I just wanted to let you know that this is a work in process right now. I understand too with the students, it's not a seamless platform right now where students are going from class to class to class with the same, interface, and that makes it harder for students as well. There are many great features that were shown, can see some of those great features, but I know it doesn't matter unless those features are more easily accessible for students, teachers, and parents. Dan has shared his punch list meetings with me, just the tremendous amount of effort that has gone into that. And I'm just trying to give an overview, open it up for questions. I probably will have to work with Mr. Martinelli on the answers to the questions, but I just wanted to tell you that that's where we are.
So we're still assessing how we're moving forward, if we're moving forward, all of that.
We're still assessing. We want to make sure that this fixing submissions works, right? And I'm hearing, but until we have teachers, testers live in there. But then I understand that that's not all the areas. What we would like to do is be able to provide a plan, and we have some timeframes, but working with Synergy on, when will this happen? When will this happen? I mean, they did stick to their timeframe with this area, but then be able to map that out more as well.
So they seem to be responsive to our requests, and we seem to be, we check them when we're working through NARIC, and I don't need to malign NARIC, but we're making progress on the list of concerns.
Yes, I reached out to the CEO of the company.
I'm a little put off by the fact that our secondary folks are kind of operating in crisis mode a little bit, right?
I'm concerned that it's January 29th, well, January 31st, and we're still discussing this. And we're still assessing what is going on. I mean, we have seniors in high school that need to have transcripts sent to colleges that can't get them right now because they're being told by their advisors at the high school that Synergy is not cooperating. I've gotten many texts from other parents. Didn't happen to me. I mean, I can't say that it happened to me, but I have gotten many texts from other parents that their kids have gone into their advisors and they can't get transcripts. So what about those deferred students that need to get their fall grades?
Are we prioritizing a list of things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So transcripts could be 15 years of data transferred from one system to another system.
I understand there's a lot of data.
It's a lot to do. I mean,
We have to do something for our students.
That's my biggest concern. I view we're in full triage mode right now because we're bleeding from a whole lot of places. I think just from my personal experience, this is absolutely affecting student learning.
Mhm.
And my question is, what resources can we give to fix this problem?
I think what we're doing is, again,
I'm not doubting that
Yeah.
people that we have are trying, but there is not enough that we are putting towards this to fix this in a time frame that it needs to be fixed.
So
Just to ask a question in regards to, clearly we have a contract. has anyone looked at where the deliverables are, both the training, execution, all the things from the synergy side? And how do we look at that contract, compare it to the services and say, this isn't working? Or we're gonna, it's,
Do better.
yeah, or we're not paying that invoice. And that's, I mean, that's really, is it a breach of contract or is it, what is the next step?
So the contract is with BOCES, not with Synergy, and BOCES contracts with Synergy. That's how a lot of the software systems that we use worked. I know that Jan reached out also to BOCES, some of the, people higher up in the technology piece, and that's something, I can do too, and continue to do, to address the transcripts. So the historical transcripts did move over. However, some of the ways that they moved over, it's, in certain cases, it's hard to tell what quarter the transcripts are, right, et cetera. And so, and I would say because of, that is a key priority. I mean, our attendance and discipline moved over as well.
Right.
And so that has, but the transcripts.
Some transcripts are working and some are hinky, and the ones that are hinky, and again, it's our problem to fix. The ones that are hinky might be a kid that worked at an internship at a hospital 4 years ago. You know what I mean? And it was how it was put in school to her. Now I'm trying to make excuses. It's just, this is a year-long process, easy. You know what I mean? And again, while I would have liked this to go more smoothly, I truly would have. This is the kind of system, when you change a SIS, a student information system, and a student management system, which is for parents, teachers, absolutely teachers, students, nurses, registration, all the stuff that we have to send to the state that run in the back end. I mean, we have to have systems that do all of these things. And so we went into this system because the other system we had was not doing all of those things. And so, again, the biggest problem, there's many problems, the biggest problem was, in my opinion, and the one that I've spent the most time on, me and my team, is that not all assignments were transferring back and forth. It wasn't good. It was taking way too long. I don't think she might, I don't know if she's here. Molly Flanagan puts an assignment out. It took 30 minutes. It's not okay. We know that. We took screenshots. We went to the company. We went to BOCES. I mean, it takes a little time, but they moved their entire timeline. They weren't going to make any changes for quite some time. We brought it to the CEO of the company, and a month later, they put the system changes in there. And again, we put it to the test site first, because I'm not going to put anything out there until we can test it. And it seemed to work pretty well. And now it's live. And really, it only went on the 29th. So, we have to watch it. So I'm taking issue by issue. And, little by little, we're getting there. On the other side of it, I can see kids logging in. I can see the data. I can see the kids are using it. It's not perfect, but it's just going to get better and better. We've changed some things based on feedback. We've had 45 PDs minimum, and even more for the back end stuff. We have more work to do when scheduling coming up. So, I mean, this is a huge undertaking. It's going to take some time to get things right, but we prioritize and then we attack it.
Have we reached out to other schools that are using Synergy successfully?
Absolutely.
Have we compared how we implemented it to how they implemented it and tried to bridge those gaps?
So the best example of that are, there are 4 districts sort of in our proximity, and we've created a little consortium. We've been online with the superintendents, assistant superintendents, district tech directors, even talked to some teachers. One particular district really put us on to a few changes. Like they had a couple go-getters there that taught us in the back end how to do things. We've already done those things. So as we learn things, I mean, this is a learning process for everybody. It's getting better and better. We're erasing some things, we're adding some things together. But that's the process. That's what has to happen. Even if we waited a year, once we go live, we're going to see problems that we never would have detected if we didn't launch it.
I mean, I think what has to happen is that our district needs to still function and have systems and supports to do that. So I guess back to Rick's comment, is there something, budgetarily, I know that we paid for support or at least for licensure for school tools down till the end of the year, or we did not?
I did to the end of the year, yes.
So if we do have emergency situations where we have to get a kid's transcript, then we could get a kid's transcript with school tool.
Not this year, last year. Last year and back. We can do that.
So the kids who have deferred and they need their fall grades to get into a college, they don't have their grades.
I mean,
Anybody that got deferred.
They,
we can't put any data into school tools, which is then.
correct. Yep. That's cut off. That's been cut off.
And is that because,
Couldn't run two systems at the same time. It would be double entry for everything.
okay, but a student exists and we create an enrollment and give them classes, you print a transcript. Is it because school tool is not allowing us to enter any data, or is it because we don't have a data transfer?
We don't have a data transfer. And quite frankly, school tool would not allow Synergy to back transport to them.
Okay.
They just wouldn't do that.
So I agree that the transcripts are crucial and will follow up with, is it NERIC or Synergy?
It's there, and they have the grades because report cards are coming out. People got the report cards and kids can finally see the report cards electronically, which has not been done before here. And so on those transcripts, the ones that are hinky, there was a kid I felt bad for who got into Syracuse University. And they needed a little help on the transcript, and it wasn't the grades or the attendance or the problem, it was some of the extra stuff that they did. And so again, we have to account for all those things and we have to get it to work, but we have so many kids doing so many things, which is what we should have, but we have to figure out a way to get them to show up correctly in our system for now and 10 years from now.
I think we all get that, and I don't think that anybody, like, I'm not interested in, pointing fingers. I guess the question is just.
What are we doing?
That we can support you moving forward so that we can get through the pieces and parts that need to get done from their end, because maybe they did overpromise and underdeliver. I don't know. That's not my job to find out. I think, we're just here to say, how can we support you? How can we support you? And what does that mean if we need to think outside of the box and not just keep going forward with the broken foot and never getting a cast on it?
I'll tell you exactly what we do, and I will, I will yield to the public opinion. Every time there's an issue that we know about, we log it. If we can dispatch somebody, and we have a million times, dispatch someone personally to go to somebody's room, we do that. Now, they don't always get the answer they're looking for, or they get the exact answer they're looking for. We do a punch list every single week. So I do a call with BOCES, with the BOCES manager and the people that are supposed to help us that, yes, we pay. And we keep a very detailed spreadsheet, front and back end, the teacher forward-facing stuff, and the stuff in the background, the scheduling, I mean, all the things no one else gets to see. And we go through each and every problem. Then we make, and by the way, we're supposed to go through BOCES. I go right to Synergy as well. I have them on speed dial, and we do a feature request if it's not something that we find out that's not customizable. And or we ask them to fix this, much like the transfer back and forth, which I would have loved that was correct in the beginning of the year. I would have loved it in October, but the work went in, it's here now, and now we have to continue, to test it, but I've seen it work.
And that you are doing absolutely everything,
Sure.
and your team is doing absolutely everything. But I guess the question is, are we at a point in the year where we continue with the, I don't know if it's gonna work, or do we need to figure something
else out because our teachers can't be continuing
so
to
that
do
we
this.
have the time that we need to support the product. I mean, I've seen the product. I think it's amazing. I think that it can do a lot of things. I was also here when we implemented School Tool, and that was not an easy thing, and we were definitely not as reliant on technology as we are now. So, no, I guess, you know, point being, again, not pointing fingers or saying nobody's doing their job or nobody's putting in effort, and it's just a matter of, like, we kind of need to decide where we're gonna go, and if there is a plan B.
So I think Dan reached out to Synergy and this happened, this timeframe. I think we need to reach back out to Merrick. You're asked what are additional supports, right? Can they provide additional support? Can they provide additional trainer? I mean, we're working with, because training is not just forward facing, it's working, the Merrick person is training, but also working with the system. I mean, I think that reached out to Synergy, they were, you know, responsive for this area. I'm sure for the next area, but I hear what you said, what can we do now to try to get to this
And
sooner?
we're also doing things in stages. We couldn't do everything all at once. We couldn't possibly train everything all at once. I mean, even there was a testing system that I added early on, way earlier than we thought. And again, we're working through that. But, you know, I mean, that's available and it's in the system. We added web pages, it's available in the system. We still have to do some PD around.
To modify the contract and fund if we were able to provide a dedicated body on site to help speed it, fix it faster. Something like that, or pull the contract out of BOCES and I know we're gonna lose the aid,
To go directly. to
but go
Synergy.
directly to Synergy because and then we have more control over what we get, what we need. They may be more responsive to our needs. I don't know if these are ideas maybe, but I think every person.
It's like, do you get enough support from BOCES? It seems like you're running it, it's skipping by
I mean,
BOCES.
again, honesty time, BOCES is getting up to speed as well. And quite frankly, those other schools that I talked about, save one, the one who gave us the ideas, other schools are calling us. And so, you know, it's hard to be the first to the fight sometimes.
Yeah.
But I like to control the implementation. And again, it's going to take a year. It might even take more than a year to get everything, you know, the way that we want it. But again, we know the issues and we're chipping away at them. And I think that's the very best we can do. And I think we're starting to pick up some momentum. And the other thing I would say is, you know, again, I helped bring Schoology to the district. Thank God we had it when the pandemic hit. And I was even certainly a fan, but Schoology was bought out by PowerSchool. PowerSchool is School Tool's competitor. They were never going to let them sink, and they never did. And even School Tool, again, we had some issues with School Tool. And so I feel strongly that we had to move. So, but we could have went to PowerSchool. I mean, you know, I mean, we could have made a different choice, but I believe we would be, I'm not trying to say we're not having problems, but we would be in a similar situation in that we would be taking a huge program and that does scheduling, that does medical, that does attendance letters. And
I know, it's not about what to do or what not to do. I mean, if you look out at the people that are here right now, there's a lot of frustrated faces, and that's what we have to deal with, and that's who we have to.
I think everyone here is willing to throw money at this.
Exactly.
I think it's a good use of our resources at this point to ease the burden to get us to where we need to be. Because if it does go beyond the timeline, and you know, like anything, it may. There's a huge difference between the tweaks that may need to happen past the timeline and the nuts and bolts of things that people are now having to switch programs and it's parent facing and student facing. Like that's the stuff that we need to figure out how to fund faster or fix faster. And it's not for lack of trying.
Right.
But we're supportive of whatever measure financially needs to happen to me.
I do have to ask, though, what are we doing for those kids who have transcripts?
so we are working both Katrina, Synergy, BOCES on transcripts every single day. I would say honestly, we're about 90% there. That's not 100%. So if we've had to go back into school tool, if we've had to reach out to the company, to the college, we've been doing those things. So, you know, again, the transcripts are tough because we do so many things. And again, it has to go in a certain spot and they have to be readable and you know, all of those things that go on. We work on that every day. We've been working on that since the onset. That's how difficult all those years of data for the multiple classes, the different grade levels, the region scores, the no region scores, you know, where you know, during the pandemic, and all of it has to be notated on there. So again, we know what has to be on there. And, you know, we're working on it with the company to get it work. You know, and we've customized some things on the transcripts and it's worked, and some other things have not worked. And that's what we're focusing on.
So some good points in terms of support. We can reach out, first of all, to Eric to see if additional support can be provided. If not, there's other options as mentioned. I do think that we should share with you a listing of the priority items and the plan. And I do understand that for those students right now, that this is a crucial decision. You know, we need to see exactly who those students are and make sure that we can address that. I also, so some of the difficulty too is during the presentation, I mean, you mentioned we did see how great it could be, but we're not feeling how great it could be, right? So that is another piece to, you know, work with them to see when is this going to happen. Share it out, share it out with teachers, some, you know, so that they can see not oh, this is how it could be, but this is how it will be with realistic timeframes, you know, this will be done by this will be done by this. We understand that we have you know, a lot of work to do in that area too, because things don't work and that's very difficult, and in a difficult environment to begin, staffing shortages and other areas as well. So I think a time frame for each step, priority, and then reporting back in terms of what Merrick says and Synergy says. And I know there's also at the end of this board meeting, there'll be some time for public comment if people wanted to share. Anything else before we go on with this? Aren't you glad I cut down from 40 slides? Okay, so anyway, so the next piece, I have to make sure I have my right. Okay. On the next agenda, you're going to see a program, a proposal, a recommendation for you to accept a contract for a program that we would like to bring to the high school called Point Break. And I know Rachel and Heather, and I'm not sure who else went to see this in action at South Colony. So I'm going to turn this over to Rachel Marcel again.
The Point Break is a program for freshmen. Colony has been doing it for many, many years. We talked to their administrative team. Heather and I were able to go and actually observe the program and see it happening with a group of about 75 of the freshmen. It's really a program targeted at what I think the root cause of some things mom threats could be. Is this really connecting on deeper level, understanding empathy, understanding at the root, we really have a lot more in common with each other than we might see on the outset, and really trying to build those deeper connections at a deeper level than our peers. And I don't think there's kind of a better time to be doing work such as that. I think that's often where there's a disconnect with youth is, you know, we see each other as different. We don't see each other as peers. We don't see each other as having similar difficulties or problems. We don't understand each other's story. And then we just go and kind of respond and react. It is just very much a freshman-based program. It is for freshmen, you know, we review the contract and such. It would be funded, you know, Stacy and I have talked, if we move forward with this, it would be funded through the grant for this year. And we would look at how we could implement this at least for the next 4 years to see that change. And we have talked to districts who see that change with that freshman class. If you do it every year as kind of part of their freshman orientation, so to speak, that it creates, you know, just more of a unified class. Because you have this opportunity, teachers would, you know, be involved as well. Basically, the setup is you break the class down into roughly, as they told us, 60 to 70 students per session. You would have at least 8 or 9 staff as well within the small groups, and then there's large group activities. They're all in one space. When we observed it, it was in a large gymnasium. And in the program, I mean, I don't know if you want to add anything additional, but it was powerful to observe, to hear the stories, to see the students kind of in the beginning being very, not really talking to because I don't know you that well, but then by the end, realizing that, oh, we are in the same class, we are freshmen together, we do have things in common, but maybe we just weren't in the same friend group. And I think you see that a lot with kids where, you know, you still have the cliques, you have kids who hang out with other kids and only associate with certain kids, but because they don't know about each other. They don't know things about each other. And this is kind of one of those programs that's the opportunity to really expand their knowledge of each other, get to know other kids outside of quote unquote their circle of the everyday friends so that they can expand their knowledge of other people and their understanding of other people, their challenges and differences. I don't know if there's anything else you want.
I would just say the theme of tonight almost sounds like we want to be proactive about all situations, right? And that's what this program is. It's for, you know, we talked about all of the ninth graders we got transferring this year, and a lot of our students that have been in the district don't know these new students, and it's hard for them to do. So this would kind of alleviate a lot of those issues and bring our ninth grade group together because it is such a large group, and it builds that empathy for one another and to learn.
And I'm not sure if you mentioned it, I'm sorry, a lot going on, but data, South Colony has seen a decrease in
Oh, yeah. They, you know, and they.
incidents since the implementation of
Absolutely.
this.
And in problems that occur within the freshman class once they've implemented this. You know, so the data, and they had letters, you know, support from all of the administrators who have been there. I mean, they've been doing it for 15 years. I mean, it's longitudinal for sure.
Like a common language too.
And they say they can look forward, like it's kind of the thing, and the teachers equally look forward to it's Point Break Day. Like they can't wait to be a part of it. And what I also felt, and Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, is the students were now able to also see teachers as people. And the one thing we know, and the one thing that all researchers, Hattie and whoever else you want to put in front of me, I do my research in this area, is that relationships are the key factor that move any data point that a district wants to change. You want to change your discipline rates, you build relationships. You want to change your attendance problem, you build relationships. You want kids to get better grades, you build relationships. And this allows kids to see their teachers as human because the teachers are participating in these small groups with them. Of course, you also make sure you have folks like myself who are counselors, somebody on standby should a kid have, you know, a more significant issue or share something that is deep or personal. But it allows, you know, for that relationship building at a completely different level, which in a teacher's classroom is really hard to do on a day-to-day basis when we have all of, you know, curriculum content and things we have to get through. So, you know, as a forward, if we were able to follow this through over 4 years to see the changes that it could make, I think we may get some good data from it. And we certainly would follow other discipline referral data, our suspensions and slow suspensions, all of that. Attendance, I mean, we could track this cohort with this data, you know, the kids who go through it.
So speaking about connections, and you had me at hello, by the way. But speaking about connections, Nadia and I met with PTA, PTO officers as part of strengthening connections, getting input from them in terms of, you know, what types of opportunities do they see as important? What are their priorities? How can we strengthen our communication? And this, we had a series of questions, I believe they're shared in something with you. This was just the first event. I do want to meet with joint PTAs for some other areas. But we're looking too to who else to talk to? How can we get the input from different groups of parents? So they were kind of our guinea pigs to ask these. I'm sorry, you're not guinea pigs, PTA, but to ask the questions.
First starting point.
Our starting point, to ask, you are a wonderful starting point to ask these questions too. And it was very positive.
That was very good. And the number one thing that they all agreed on, when we asked what would you like the district to add, were social, emotional, and behavioral supports. So the kids are not okay, and everybody knows it. And these are the kinds of programs that we need to build in. So thank you for that.
And then just the final thing for tonight, at a previous meeting, we had mentioned Handle with Care, working with the Cohoes Police, and we have started, and I'm going to turn that piece over to Dan.
We've, for years, amongst all the schools, we've danced around this with our very strong relationship with the Cohoes Police Department, but we formalized it now. And so what we're doing with Handle with Care is, and it's only going to cost us a little bit, Stacy. We're paying just a little bit of overtime, but all of the detectives are going to come in periodically, hour early or so at the onset of each shift. And they're going to go through all the reports, and any family that had an interaction with the police, particularly the kids, they're going to report that to us. And then we immediately send that communication out to the buildings, to the principal, to a social worker, and anyone else that needs to know. Now, people know that we're only sharing the information that we need to know, and it's up to the buildings, of course, and they're used to this. They've been doing this for a long time on what can we do to support this child. Maybe they just need a check-in. And already we've had 9 reports, and those reports could be anything from domestic violence in the home, overdoses. I'm not trying to turn this down, but we have kids that have watched people get Narcaned. Burglary, a live burglary, it was almost a home invasion. All of those things have happened. And so what we're able to do, small or large, is we can get to that kid and get to that family if needed and provide some additional supports. We just really want to know when kids come in and are going to have a rough day. And again, we've been dancing around this for a while, but it's really nice. It's our first full week. It's not quite the full week of doing it, but it's worked exactly as we've set it up. So, we're really kind of proud of that.
A lot. Your turn, Mrs. Mackey.
I can be very quick.
That's up to you, but.
I have good news. We had our bids for the capital projects, and the bid environment was very favorable. We had a lot of competition, good attendance, so good news. We'll be able to approve all of the contracts at our next meeting. We were trying to get it for tonight, but we didn't have enough time to dot all the i's and cross all the t's. So we'll have the contracts for our next agenda, and it will include all of the alternatives. So that's wonderful news. Also for the next agenda, we'll have the piggybacking contracts, hopefully all set. We're still working on the due diligence aspect, and that's fun a lot. So we're hoping that we'll be able to tie that up and have that on the next agenda as well. And just a quick update on the budget committee. So we met with our budget committee yesterday, was our first meeting. And we met with IT, the athletic department, as well as our secondary schools. And then tomorrow is our next meeting, and we'll be meeting with buildings and grounds, our elementary schools, and special programs. And the next time we meet, I'll have a presentation on revenue. So we'll walk through our favorite calculation, the tax cap calculation, and I'll have a summary of our executive budget proposal that Assemblymember McDonald was just talking about.
And thank you, Mr. Jackson and Mrs. Carey, for hanging in there yesterday at the committee meeting, and we're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. I'm hoping you can say the same thing about us.
Bring a timer tomorrow. Thank you for that. That's great news about being able to do all
I'll say yay for favorable bid.
Yes.
That's what kids.
Yes.
Nice job breaking that all out. So we had that option. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Good, on this side of the table?
The coordinator.
Yep, we're gonna
Is it gonna
do
be here?
the,
All right.
Board of Education discussion on any of the items on this agenda. Discussion of any items on this agenda.
The agenda.
Synergies on the agenda, right? Okay, so Elaine Plato, 10 more time court, resident of Cohoes and proud resident of Cohoes. I try to keep my comments thoughtful and certainly respectful, and I did find myself getting a little flustered, so bear with me. As a social worker at CMS for 27 years, I've cared for students and addressed their emotional, behavioral, and mental health concerns. I've also been known to help them academically, but I mostly stay in my lane of mental health and wellness. I can do better. That being said, I have also been a resource for my colleagues and have focused on the overall wellness of the CMS community. I really value and love this place and my people. One thing Schoology offered to us that Synergy doesn't is the ability to feel like a community that despite being on 3 different floors, educating 3 different grades, we were connected. And I just want to give you a little background, because I think the what have we lost is missing. Excuse me about Schoology. Schoology enabled us to know which student achieved a PE challenge or created an incredible tech project or the slime you had to walk past on your way in here today, or what the latest student council event was. And there are many more examples of student achievement that we were able to stay connected about. And this type of connection elevates a building's sense of community. Staff were also able to interact with each other regarding class coverage, our PBIS cook-offs, and share resources and articles that were educationally beneficial, as did our principals share them with us over the years. Similar to social media newsfeed, we were able to have relevant educational conversations despite not seeing each other on a given day. Since moving to Synergy, there has been a noticeable disconnect within our school community. This may not seem like a lot, but it does affect the overall tone of the building. And it's not just that people have been focused on learning how to use Synergy. Synergy hasn't shown it has the ability for social communication, at least to my knowledge, that's Schoology. And sadly, we were not asked what we liked about Schoology before we moved off the platform. I'm still not sure why we moved away from it, but there are losses in addition to the academic difficulties my teacher colleagues are experiencing that you've mentioned. And as an aside, one of my colleagues who teaches 21st century skills, highly technology-based, has a list for your information if you'd like to about some things that she has encountered that have fixed and some that have not been. Personally, I use the school tool a lot and I miss its features. I'm no longer able to access or quantify data to support PBIS or tier 2 interventions independently. And we used to do a lot of that proactively, look at the data, say, here's something we see, let's pre-plan an intervention or something to address that. I can't do that currently. And the historical data school tool keeps for us is invaluable as students move from grade to grade and often in and out of our district. The information you could get with just 1 or 2 clicks on school tool is now cumbersome and frustrating using Synergy. And I don't believe we can access the same data or reports, but again, I'll stay open-minded about that. Ultimately, I would love an honest answer to the question of why we switched in the first place and why staff, administration, teachers, the people who use the systems were not included and involved in switching to another platform. And I'm also concerned, and I guess this may be the taxpayer hat, like
if we think about efficiency of resources, and I appreciate and respect the time that has gone into trying to make this work, but what are we losing? What is not happening and what is not being attended to with all the time that we're focusing on synergy, I almost said school too. That's one of my bigger concerns, like where are the gaps? And I don't know if that's quantifiable, but I'm sure there are people who have some answers to those conversations. So that's all I just, thank you.
Thank you. Is that something that you'd like to read so we can include it in the concerns
No,
list?
it's good.
Anyone else?
Look, I'll just genuinely want to subject taxpayer, parents, teacher, principal. I don't have a nice thing for about but just kind of, we all are completely open to trying new things, and we're all trying every single day to make it work, to make it user-friendly, to make it easier for the kids. I can't stand going back to paper everything, but there's a lot of people that are, because I think we have the cohort of teachers that are trying, that are emailing Jen, that are going to Dan, that are going to Kyle, that are doing whatever we can on the daily in the middle of our classes while we're taking attendance. And then all those other things are kind of like subsiding, where I might be teaching for 30 minutes instead of 45 that day. Just bear with me, sorry, hold on, a magazine, or, you know, something that I don't really want to do. And then I think we have the other cohort of teachers that literally are saying things like, I hate it, I can't use it, I don't know what to do, so everything's just gonna go on paper. And for where our kids are going, that's what's doing anything good for them. To be taking their tests on paper, writing their essays on paper, you know, all of that stuff moving forward to the future. But I mean, just for example, for today, I submitted my grades 2 days ago, and then I got a phone call at 9:30 when they were due at 8 saying it didn't go through. So now in the middle of the class, I'm like, oh crap, what am I doing? You need this now. And I'm trying to fix it. It's saying it went through, it's not showing up on their end, I have to redo it. Then it's like trying to look up discipline of kids or where they are. It's just like all those features, and I get it's a work in progress, all those things we're trying, but multiple times throughout just one day, there was synergy issue after uploading issue after, you know, whatever it is, it's always something in a different class where we're trying to fix it. And we know it takes time. It's just like, I feel like, and I know you guys know, but it's like multiple things throughout the day that I feel like we're losing time with the kids. And maybe it's gonna take a year and it's gonna be wonderful, and maybe we're gonna, it's not gonna be wonderful. I don't know, but it's almost like too long every day where I feel like we're not being as effective as we can due to unforeseen circumstances that we can.
I'll do I need my time. John Steve, 5823, yes. Few things, like I could sit here and list my problems with the program. Obviously, there's always going to be problems with something new that's going to happen. I'm going to skip over that entire aspect. But focus on a couple things that Katie and Flair have said. The amount of teaching time that is lost to the low times with this program and everything else is through the roof. I don't think that can be expressed. I know we were on an every minute matters train for a while, but apparently we're off of that and we're losing, I mean, I'd say at least 5 minutes of class to synergy and the amount of stuff that we're going through. And I know that we're at those bigger issues and we're focused on fixing the bigger issues, but some of these taking attendance needs to be quicker. Like on school towards clicks. Now we have to open up this, it doesn't always match from here to here to here to here. And that takes time. The other thing I want to open, I mean, I came to this district, I came to this city because there was this sense of community in Cohoes that doesn't exist elsewhere. You don't see this support, you don't see this support. We have a larger percentage of teachers that graduated from Cohoes teaching Cohoes than anywhere else. We have more of our teachers living in the district than most other places because of this sense of community that is unique here. And I really, the morale in the buildings, and this is not the only reason why, but it's definitely putting on top of it is great. I was heard it was just a middle school, well, it was kind of hoping, I guess, it was just a middle school, but I talked to some people about the buildings. And there's this sense that we're, as teachers, not being heard. And it hurts, and it's breaking the community sense that we always had. It's very, very strong sense of community that we had. In Cohoes. That being said, I'm really glad I came to this board meeting tonight, and heard you guys all speak and ask their questions, because I feel more confident now that you guys said it, and we're working on it, because I honestly wasn't sure before being here, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Mr. Sherlin, did everyone say what you wanted to say, or we can skip you?
No.
That'll never happen.
Scott Trelawney, I'm the president of the Cohoes Teachers Association. One of my jobs is to represent our membership and what they think. Some of the things I have written down in this statement you've already heard by my colleagues here. I appreciate the update that was done to provide us with information regarding the progress on synergy. However, I still think there is a great deal of skepticism that this product is best suited for the needs of its users. While there have been some fixes for some of the issues, there still remains a great deal of concern about the functionality and the usability of this program. The question that remains unanswered, brought up by a couple of my colleagues, was why the change? We got a little bit of that tonight, but it seemed it was very district-centric and not teacher-centric. We had 2 programs that we used, Schoology and School Tools. They were utilized, and everyone had a very good mastery of that because of COVID, that's all we used. And they definitely serve the needs of all the stakeholders. Now we have a program that's inefficient, that, as you've heard, some teachers aren't using because they've migrated over to Google Classroom because it's a lot easier to use for them and their students. Teachers aren't using a lot of the features of Synergy because they're really just too difficult and too cumbersome to navigate. One of the things that I've heard from my members constantly lately is I'm over Synergy. The rollout was abysmal. The training that we've got has been minimal. And even if we got Synergy to a good point, many of the members have just soured on this program already, and the opportunity to get that buy-in from teachers has long passed. The bottom line is that no matter how many of the minor or major issues that we need to get fixed, and I think there are significant ones that need to be fixed, both major and minor, it seems to me that we were sold an inefficient, incomplete, and inferior product compared to what we had. I've been an officer of the union for probably about 15 years now. Since I became an officer, I've come to pretty much every single board meeting. The Board of Education, no matter who's been sitting in those 7 seats, has always extolled the virtue of having a voice. And whether it's student voice, whether it's staff voice, whether it's parent voice, these voices are expressing that this is not working for us. And the question, and I hope that this board will listen to what we're saying about this program, because, and hear the pleas of the voices that you tell us you value so much. So I would like to invite any member of the board to come into our schools and talk to our teachers so you can hear and see firsthand how this program has made our jobs so much more difficult. I am also sure that if you talk to any of the students or the administrators or the support staff, they would welcome the conversation as well. The repetitive message of, oh, we're fixing that, seems to kind of be the drumbeat that we're getting from district leadership consistently. But how long does the board keep letting them beat that drum? We're halfway through the school year, and many are afraid, justifiably based on what was said this evening, that we're going to continue to hear that message for the rest of the school year. And as a response, from the district, from Synergy, if we continue with it, we're going to hear it into the next year. Our members are already frustrated right now. Think about how they're going to be if we still have this problem 2 years down the road. If any of the stakeholder groups were actually involved and had any input on this system, we might have figured out quickly that this is not the product for us and it's just a bad product. But we didn't, so that is why we're all voting. Thank you for your time.
I'll offer you the same opportunity to leave your your comments for us to add?
I will scribble on my papers. I will.
Thank you. We know that you don't take lightly appearing as a group. We know that you choose your words carefully. So we appreciate you coming and sharing.
I'll take you up on your offer. I'll come in.
Okay, discussion. Any other discussion? No? Yes? Hi.
I'm actually running to little students now in my junior year in high school. I actually was one of the about senior month ago, sound and about having a competition. We're going to make this, and we're going to do this stuff. January 2 days ago. And we have a lot of concerns that you guys discussed earlier today. But one of our biggest issues that I know that you mentioned is we are being further than we need to be. I know that you guys saw some people a lot, and I know some of them even investments of synergy. I actually were looking to specify on Mr. Trouble when we started the mission, because it's become a big issue. And it's becoming more negative. Because what's happening is teachers are saying, oh my God, I hate synergy, this is the work I don't know what to do. And it just creates a negative studying and knowing of the city, so work is done the way it should be. I've spoken to some of my peers, who are in the representative and it's become a big issue with not being able to see the grades, or people to put some of you guys as zero and put your grades down, and obviously us knowing that we get higher grades and we stress out more than normal. It's great. It's become a big issue, which is why you mentioned how it's really impacting us socially. I know that's something that, and just the school district, that I wanted to bring up. We want us to have the support that we need, and it doesn't have to be said, oh, we're gonna fix this, oh, we're working on it. You're kind of steering away from the situation and the issues that we're bringing up instead of actually fixing them. And I know it's difficult because it's never, I'm trying to understand the society. But at the same time, it's a big problem where we try to talk, we try to get our voices out, but it doesn't always work like we want to. And you kind of talk to all the teachers and they all have the same issues, but you didn't care too much. Anything that you wanted to do, or how difficult then to kind of start developing what's happening. And I know that teachers work in some, like Ms. Estefano made their voices very strong. And I know that she also said, when the CEO explained kind of to me. And I know that it's very starting to do something, but we just want something that works and something like school that we had, where we read functionality that we knew about. Like when I first, that's the first thing that we sat in this, and we had a projector, and that's the first thing we did. We were how schools work, what we need to do, and what we need to do. And we got into school issues, and we went to start Schoology, but nothing was there. We looked at our free book, we tried to write all the classes that we did, and then we found out when we got to school, oh, we have a new program, and it's called Thinking People. We didn't know what to do. So we just want something that works, and something that works with the support, and something that you guys all something with stability, and how that's really affects the.
That was excellent. Thank you so much. Very, very well done. The board, I know this is so not what you are asking us for. We actually have a policy that says we can't have a back and forth conversation, but we can refer you to district administration, and I would love to be at the meeting where we follow up. If that's okay with you. Thank you so much.
And we're sure it's going to be on another agenda where we can have that open dialogue again.
Okay, anyone else? That's a hard thing to chat. We actually have to make a modification to the agenda. We have a walk-on resolution, and what I'm going to do is ask someone to make a motion to add this to the agenda, so it can be part of the consent agenda. So I would like to have a motion that we add the following resolution as item 6B. Resolved that the Board of Education of Cohoes City School District denies the appeal of the discipline imposed on a particular district student.
Make that motion.
I'll second it. Thank you. So that item will be added to the agenda as 6B. So we have a motion that the Board of Education adopt the following resolutions of the January 31st, 2024 agenda. 6B, 7A through K, 9A.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Mrs. Gillard?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Gendron?
Yes.
Mrs. Curtis?
Yes.
Rhodes?
Yes.
Very visible, yes. Thank you for that. Now? Yeah.
So at this point in time, I would like to congratulate both Suzanne Dunn and Cheryl Barber. Their retirement was accepted by the board. I tried to tell everybody, don't accept it, but they did. And I just want to thank both of them for their many years of service in the Cohoes City School District. I'm glad we have them till June, but just wanted to mention that tonight.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the donation from the Parents Organization of Avon Lansing. $1,309. It's solid fundraising. We're grateful for that. Any comments from Board of Education members on anything that's not on the agenda? Community members for non-agenda items? No? As Peggy mentioned, the workplace violence prevention policy was on for first reading. That will come up for adoption at a future meeting. Our next meeting are Valentine's Day. Come spend it with us.
Wear your red.
Wear your red.
I expect flowers.
Oh. Both of those meetings are at 6 p.m. Can we actually get a motion to go back into executive session to discuss, no one circled it. I don't understand what's happening. To discuss superintendent's evaluation. 8:08 p.m. I'll make a motion. Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Mrs. Giller?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Grudgingly.
Mrs. Snyder? Gendron? Yes. Curtis?
Yes.
Rhodes?
Yes.
Carried, yes. Thank you. We don't expect to come back after this session.